Disney World reopening plans. It's the Disney World news that you've been waiting for. Let's get to it. Hey everyone, Dave K here today, and today I want to talk you through the potential reopening of Disney World and other restaurants, hotels, and theme parks in the Central Florida area. Such an exciting proposition. I know you've been waiting for this moment. You know I have. I'd love to get back out there and grab some of my favorite foods and have some fun. And the Orange County Economic Recovery Task Force met earlier in the week and went over a couple of different things in terms of the economy, especially that Central Florida economy reopening and what requirements may need to be in place in order for the economy to reopen. Now, it sounds like Disney may have specifically requested that the economy reopening is not looked at by potential sector like restaurants or hotels, but instead looked at as a business's capability to meet a certain set of guidelines or meet a certain set of requirements so that they can reopen during these particular phases of the economy reopening. So it won't be theme parks open after restaurants, but more so potentially, doesn't sound like this is guaranteed, but more so potentially if you meet these requirements, you can open in phase 1, or if you meet these requirements, you can open in phase 2. And we don't know when phase 1 or phase 2 are, but here are some of the requirements and some of those guidelines that the team went over. For some of those requirements, it sounds like all employees at a theme park to reopen would be required to wear face masks. Hand sanitizer, touchless hand sanitizer, would be required at park entrances, ticketing, entry, and turnstiles, in addition to all attraction entrances and exits. So a lot of touchless hand sanitizer throughout your favorite theme parks to make sure everyone's staying well. Temperature checks for employees prior to their scheduled shift. So if an employee has a temperature over 100.4 degrees, I don't know if it's going in the ear or in the mouth there, but if it's over 100.4 degrees, they will not be able to enter the premises. So that would be one of the requirements to reopen at this time as well, within that earlier phase of the economy reopening. It also says wiping down of all railings and surfaces after every use, and all employees with flu-like symptoms will be advised to stay at home. It sounds like a phase 1 opening would look like 50% capacity, and phase 2 opening would look like a 75% capacity. Again, none of this is guaranteed. This sounds like it was discussed, maybe a proposed plan, but nothing is confirmed quite yet. Now, looking at this a little bit deeper, there are some elements of this that concern me quite a bit. To think that, employees may be able to enter the premises when they have flu-like symptoms or may have a temperature, but it's not quite at 100.4 yet, worries me a little bit. I think depending upon when we're talking about this reopening happening, there is obviously still risk for people potentially getting ill. Again, depending upon where we sit on that curve, which is why I'm concerned when reading some of these mandates. I want to make sure that we do have as much kind of restriction, in a sense, as possible to make sure everyone stays safe during this time. I understand the importance of reopening these businesses, but I'm also thinking about those factors. And I know there's only so much you can control, but those things do worry me and make me hesitate a little bit in terms of those theme parks reopening. I want to make sure that when we're able to get back out there in phase 1, phase 2, that everyone's safe, even if we're taking all these precautions, right? So we're wearing our face masks, or maybe we're hand sanitizing everywhere, but we're still also making sure we're not getting ill following these other methods by making sure there's no one ill in the park. Maybe if every guest, I think that might be too much to ask, but if every guest were checked for their temperature as well, maybe that would be beneficial in addition. But again, you can't do too much. These are just, again, sounds like what this committee is initially planning, and I like how it sounds. I'm just very hopeful that the precautions are taken at the right time and the phase 1 doesn't start until we are sufficiently comfortable with how the illness cases are at the present time. As for some of those guidelines, so these sound more like recommendations, tape markings of 6 feet apart in ride and attraction queues. You've got staff regularly wiping down more of those surfaces as well at random, so not just those railings, but any other surfaces. And again, phase 1 and phase 2, a recommendation here is staff who are 65 plus are encouraged to stay at home. So we've talked about how this illness could potentially be more damaging to those in these older age groups. We want to make sure that we're taking care of everyone. Now again, hearing that and thinking they're encouraged to stay home does again make me kind of worry, because everyone is susceptible to this illness, right? Everyone could have terrible symptoms to this illness. So we want to make sure that everyone is appropriately taken care of and we're not rushing back out there too quickly when it's still a risk to people. But we'll have to see how things play out, see how kind of the situation unfolds and how things move forward. And there's a couple points with food and with restaurants here as well that also kind of tie into Disney's larger operations and other theme parks' larger operations, in addition to those freestanding restaurants or hotels. So let's dive into those too. For those mandates for restaurants, we're hearing hand sanitizer should be available at every table. Hand sanitizer should be visible in plain sight in the entryway of a restaurant as well. And all employees in restaurants also will be required to wear face masks. This makes me think additionally maybe it would be beneficial if we as guests in a lot of different venues, maybe not at a restaurant, maybe at a restaurant, would wear face masks and take them off as needed just to kind of reduce that risk as well. But we'll have to see again. Just another thought going through my mind if you have that capability. Temperature checks prior to shift for employees on this one, just like in those theme parks, in addition to the flu symptoms advised to stay home. And again, this does make me concerned because if you're really worried and you need that income, even if you have those flu-like symptoms, you may feel like you need to work, and that may pose a potential risk for a huge number of people. Now, we can't know how this will play out, how it will look, but that's a concern in the back of my mind. So doors are to be wiped regularly, and employees, all employees behind the counters, are required to wear gloves except for bartenders who sounds like they must hand sanitize after each and every drink they make. So definitely nice to hear those precautions are being made. I'm hoping that hand sanitizer takes the form of actual soap and water for those bartenders, because you want to make sure that you're taking care of your hands, right? Don't put too much hand sanitizer back to back to back to back on your hands. Again, personal thought on that one, but just a recommendation. And then seated tables are to be 6 feet apart. So again, phase 1 is at that 50% to capacity, and then phase 2 being at that 75% to capacity. So phases of opening. I do like that phased approach where we say we're limiting our head count, our maximum service to this percentage of individuals so that people have more space to move around a venue and don't have to worry about interacting with others quite as much. I think that that's a smart kind of piece to consider in these reopenings in phases. Under the guidelines section, we have paper and disposable menus. So instead of those plastic ones you're used to seeing, just disposable ones, so they don't need to be reused. And you'll see a lot of theme here in terms of disposable instead of reusable items, which in this particular case, I feel like makes a lot of sense. Encouraging takeout and online orders, kind of as we have the ability to do at some restaurants now, depending upon if that restaurant is open. And touchless sanitizer at entry is recommended. So it sounds like for those restaurants, they don't need it to be touchless at entry. That's only a recommendation for them. Whereas at the theme parks, it does need to be touchless. So you can see those requirements are a little bit higher for theme parks, but you still have a lot of similarity in those restaurants. And additionally, phase 1 and phase 2 staff over 65 years old are again encouraged to stay home. And this again makes me concerned about people's income. Are they going to be able to bring in the money they need during this time if they're encouraged to stay home? Let's say you're in that older group and you want to be able to go out and make money. You need to somehow make money to pay your bills. You may feel like you need to go out during phase 1, and that does concern me a little bit. I hope we do everything we need to do to take care of everyone in the economy. Now it's time for the mandates at the hotels. You've got face masks. All employees required to wear face masks. So you can see this is consistent across all businesses, just like hand sanitizer at entry to be in plain and visible sight. So that's consistent again across theme parks, restaurants, and hotels. Hand sanitizer and face masks. You've also got the temperature checks for employees at start of shift and the flu-like symptoms advised to stay home, just like those other 2 lines of businesses. So a lot of similarity in those mandates. Additionally, for hotels, it sounds like front desk might be required to sanitize on a regular basis, consistent cleaning in all guest areas, and front desk to utilize sneeze guards. So you may have seen some of these sneeze guards in some of your grocery stores, or maybe you haven't, where those kind of glass structures have come up in front of those cash registers, and they're asking you to maybe stand in a particular box if you've been to Publix or some of your other favorite restaurants to make sure that the sneeze is kind of guarded in that space and doesn't contaminate that cash register. So that sounds like something similarly that may be implemented at hotels. This is an interesting one. Removal of all service items, including glassware or other utensils, coffee cups. Those items will potentially be removed, based on this proposal, will be removed from guest areas because those reusable items may carry contagions, whereas you'll find those papers or those single-use items will still be in stock. Mini bars will not be stocked on this proposal, and they will not offer self-food services. So if they are used to a buffet style, for example, or like a continental breakfast where you serve yourself, those sorts of things would be restricted during the early phases. The hotel's got a lot of them. We've got space pool furniture according to distancing guidelines. So I'm assuming that's the 6 feet apart for each pool furniture, in addition to pool gates and pool chairs to be sanitized regularly. Door handles, elevator buttons, and every regular point of contact, like railings, would be sanitized regularly, in addition to coffee makers being removed from guest rooms. So you can see that some of those accommodations, some of those amenities you might normally expect may be removed during this time, again, just to make sure that we are keeping safe for that longer term and building to a point where we can bring those items back. And bell carts and guest keys would also be sanitized regularly, the keys after each use, so that we would minimize that risk to individuals. Again, phase 1 and phase 2 have no conferences on that one, so closing out those larger sessions where more people come together, as opposed to the 50% in restaurants, you want to close off those conferences, make sure people aren't coming together in a large space in those hotels. So there's a lot of restrictions here that may limit how much people even want to go out during this time. In those earlier phases, people may be concerned about the illness, or people may be concerned about the limited number of resources and enjoyment and amenities they'd have as going to the theme parks, hotels, or to the restaurants that they might normally get if things were okay. So I don't know if this would limit attendance, or maybe we'll see a huge influx of people going out to hotels, theme parks, and restaurants. I definitely would love to go back out and be able to sit in a restaurant and enjoy some great food, but I also hesitate at the current time because I don't want to get exposed to anything or spread anything that I shouldn't. Lately, I haven't gone out at all. So this is all kind of factors to keep in mind here. We don't know when this proposal would potentially call for effect for phase 1 or phase 2. We don't know the calendar date, nor do we know where it would sit on the curve. I think that would be nice to know. Just get an idea of, okay, this proposal takes place at kind of this point on the curve, and then we could have a better gauge as to whether or not we'll want to go out during that time. Again, this is a proposal, and any of these things are subject to change moving forward, so we don't know whether or not these particular requirements and guidelines will be implemented, or if other changes will occur before the parks and restaurants and hotels reopen. But it's nice to know that they're working on these ideas, that the Disney World reopening plan is kind of underway, and that task force has come together with a lot of leaders to plan for our excitement and our enjoyment to come back to our days. But I hope you're still being able to bring some excitement and some enjoyment to your day from home. What do you think of these proposals? Are you with it? Do you think some changes should be made? Are you concerned, or are you excited? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell to stay informed of future adventures. Again, thank you as always for being a part of the fun with me. And until the next one, play on. Hey everyone, Dave K here, and today I want to talk to you about Disney World reopening plans. Today I want to address with you potential plans for Disney World to reopen as discussed by the Orange County Economic Recovery Task Force, and what factors may be in effect when Disney World reopens. Let's get to it.